move straight on to our second presentation from Liz Riley and Susan Thomas of Scottish Government. To set the scene a little, Liz and Susan have been deeply involved, and Liz indeed has led the Scottish Government and NHS Scotland iMatter programme, which is an innovative and highly effective model of engaging and promoting engagement with staff that engages with more than 100,000 health and care employees across NHS Scotland and related organisations. How did this great innovation come about and how does it work? Liz and Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Colin. First of all, Anna, what a wonderful presentation. Everything we have experienced in our 10-year journey we lived through. So all the theory that you actually talked about, highlighted today, we'll now walk you through what that experience was like in real life and how we worked with 176,000 staff in the big beast that we all love and call our beloved NHS. So going to take you on to the first part of our journey, iMatter, what is it? It started out as an objective from, just as you said, Anna, seniors and HR directors who were not happy with the National Staff Survey, which was pulling a 27% response rate 8 years ago. And they wanted something different, but they wanted something that produced a start. And after 2 years of us working and literally, honestly working co-production model with our staff at all levels, but actually at the very beginning, we could see that the most important people in all of the journey and the hierarchy structure are actually team managers. And very quickly we established, what did the NAT survey not have that our staff? I just so happen to come, although I am in Scottish Government currently and have been there a number of years, I actually come from a health board called NHS Tayside. So I had lived a number of different experiences within a health board, and at the end of the day, the most significant relationship for myself and for many others was always about the relationship with your team manager and actually then with your team. So what we established very quickly was that the National Staff Survey wasn't working because we had actually lost some of the psychological contracting with our staff for many, many reasons. A huge amount of that was trust. It wasn't about the staff filled in the survey, they never heard anything, and they most certainly did not feel an emotional connection that anything actually was improving. And actually their verbal was, it was getting worse. And a lot of that over the years has played out, obviously, on different streams of media. So we then said to the staff, well, we want us to get together, we want us to be innovative, we want us to be creative. We didn't actually have wine because we're not allowed that, because policies, practices and procedures constrain you in the NHS from doing that, but perhaps we can get you in to actually persuade, innovate, implement a different way of working. We certainly did have lots of teas, coffees, we had lots of goodies, and we worked with 2,300 staff over a period of 2 years from 4 health boards. So we came up that the remit was that we had to come up with this measure, an EEI score. We were told that was an employee engagement index. We learned very early on. But actually after 2 years of working with these colleagues, we went back and said to seniors, that's not good enough. And actually stats is only stats. And we want to have a door, and that's an innovative door, that we actually open up, and behind that door are human beings. They're our staff. And we want to give them the empowerment, the enablement to actually improve their engagement and to put some reciprocal right and responsibility back, because that's what a contract is about. It's about a two-way street. And that just so happened to be establishing our early psychological contract with the staff. At the heart of that, we put health and wellbeing and values very much at the heart of iMatter, and the staff actually called the model iMatter. They came up with 3 different ideas, and then they voted. The I was so important to them before we even got to we. So now we're going to walk on to the foundation of our work, was called a staff experience framework. You talked, Anna, about strategy. Well, our strategy at that time was the Healthcare Strategy 2020. That's currently now being reviewed because we are in 2020 and we are looking to have potentially a 15-year vision to 2035. Prior to me coming into the post as project manager at that time, I had met David MacLeod and Nita Clark, two very innovative, inspiring colleagues who I have kept very close with, and they became our professional critical friends. We have in the NHS launched in 2003 staff governance standards. If you take away the word staff governance standards, as you actually look at the standards, they would apply to any organisation, public, private, universities, education, etc. They are actually enshrined in legislation. That is very unique. And that's about holding people to account. But again, as you said, Anna, we have many managers at all different levels, who actually do live the values and the principles of the staff governance standards, but we have many managers who pay lip service to that. And at the end of the day, at the end of that is staff who maybe their staff experience is not quite what it should be, but if you were to listen to them, you would think it was absolutely fantastic. And of course, as all in every organisation, that plays out in many different shapes and forms. Then we set about the core work for the 2,300 staff, and we were classed as the wraparound. They were the colleagues that were to do the work, and between them all at many different levels, clinical and non-clinical, they came up with what we classed as, and you will hear throughout the story, many analogies around food. So we came up with, what's your Mary Berry recipe? Because she obviously was a hot subject at that time about all the fantastic cakes and everything that she makes. So the staff came up with, well, what's the recipe? We went into 4 different boards at different times. We asked what was important to the staff, and they came up with what their expectations should be for every manager to psychologically contract with them. There were many different iterations, testings, and then thereafter we then developed questions that were attached to every staff experience component linked back to our staff governance standard. That work was then given over to University West of Scotland, who validated our work and said that we set, as Professor Rawson Snowden taught us, what are you measuring, and most importantly, why are you measuring? So we've never forgot these 2 sets of principles that Austin taught us. So we established a questionnaire, we went through 3 iterations, and then it was signed off. And then we're going to walk you on to the next stage. In between time, our model was signed off in 2013. Before we go on to actually the length of the model, slightly later we met Dr. Sarah Pass, who worked with David MacLeod in Engaging for Success and also CIPD. And unknowingly, because I hadn't seen your presentation, Anna, and I have never met you, all the things that you said in your presentation, lo and behold, marry up with ours, because there are fundamental psychological relationships that we all have, and we all call them different role players, as you talked about the players. Well, these were the players that Sarah, who had come along and done some research work with us. So I thought it was really important to set the scene, because this is about HRM, before we actually go into how we took our model forward. So if you keep that in mind, and all that Anna has said absolutely mirrors everything, this is the model that the staff came up with, and at the heart of it is the team. So before we even got to the seniors, we were interested in how could we innovatively and creatively actually get team managers to own this, to become more empowered, more enabled. And longer term, yes, the strategy would be, well, how's the EEI score going? Is it going up or is it going down? Where's the benchmarking across all our 22 health boards? All the things that go on, and even more, have a political edge to it when you work in Scottish Government. So this is all the different stages of our model which you can look at. There are many pieces of our research available as well, and we're happy obviously to share these with you. So at the heart of that, at the end, is the blue one, the action plans. So we're not really interested in the stats. Scottish Government probably are interested in the stats. We're interested in, okay, so what did you do when you got your team report? So we have team reports, directorate report, board report, and then of course the national report. That's us, Scottish Government. And the team, all these reports go out at the same time. So historically, senior people would get information before obviously the staff heard about it. Sometimes that information actually might be cherry-picked about what the staff would be told, etc. So in part of our innovation, initially that's how we worked. And then the staff came back and said, why are we not getting the team reports at the same time? So again, as you again talked about, Anna, innovation does actually, it evolves. And if it's not evolving, it's not in a good place, because ours has evolved for 10 years and will continue to evolve long, long after I've left, and probably long after Suzanne. And that shows to us that that's in a healthy place, because someone will always come along and go, well, in our Scottish words, but, what about, but. That's for us a good test that we've kept this live, fresh, and it still continues to journey 10 years after we started this. So the teams develop action plans, they produce a storyboard, and some of our creative staff and innovative staff have actually taken that to further stages. They've actually developed our team stories. Some are video, some are written, and again, that's a huge part of freshness that's been added to our journey. We're going to move on now to the next part. So after 3 years of work, we always said at the beginning, we're not coming in, or I certainly was not coming in to Scottish Government just to do something to its death. We said at the beginning that when we actually published and went live in 2015, 2016, we gave boards 3 years to implement iMatter, and that we would have a period of time, 3 years, and we would then bring back in an academic evaluation. We work with many clinicians and nurses, but in particular our clinical fellows, who obviously work from evidence base, who are steeped in academia, and we learnt very quickly to get them on side and to ensure that they journeyed with us, that actually having academic evaluations was really important. So we put out a tender, and there was a number of universities bid, and just lo and behold, Strathclyde University were successful. And that was when we met Professor Colin Lindsay and Dr. Robert Stewart. We'd previously met Professor Patricia Finlay, because she was in doing another piece of work with Scottish Government and our colleagues. So Colin and Robert in particular worked and met many of our staff, all at different levels, and they developed a report. It was taken into our senior governance table. It was signed off last June, and we then took their 12 recommendations forward. One key one for us was around another measure, dignity at work. It had gone down like a lead balloon with the staff. They didn't feel that they really got it, and they wanted us to look at that. So we have developed a further piece of work on the back of that recommendation, and we started early work with Professor Thurston Chimra, who is a Professor of Behavioural Science and also Socioeconomics, and Dr. Sarah Pass. We had our first engagement event on the 31st of January, and then sadly COVID came along, so that's currently been put on pause. We will look to probably implement that around January next year, all depending on what's going to happen if COVID phase 2 comes along. This is a very early visual that we developed with the staff. We have 7 development boards and 4 health and social care partnerships. We will adopt, as Colin and Robert wrote about, that we should continue to use the successful methodology that we had implemented for iMatter, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And now we're going to move on to the next one. I'm going to pass you over to Suzanne.
Okay, so I'll talk quite quickly because I'm conscious of time about what we're doing as our iteration for this year. Obviously, Liz has mentioned, as everyone will be aware, that COVID started affecting us all earlier this year. So we had to take stock and really think about how we prioritised our staff experience measurement for this year, which accounts for a service which is still reacting and recovering from COVID and trying to remobilise a lot of services, but while still giving employees a true voice to talk about how they've been feeling during that period and any indicators of things that are potentially making them unhappy. So this slide gives you a summary of the key areas we focused on because we've had to condense our iMatter survey. There's a lot of work that goes into the national staff experience model, about 3 months preparatory work for that, which obviously is not something the NHS could afford right now. So the key priorities has been the well-being of staff, and that's looking at the holistic well-being, so not just about workplace well-being. There's clearly blurred lines for a lot of people now that you'll see we're at home. We're at home doing this session for you today, and that's the exact same for a lot of staff. So the holistic well-being, we can appreciate that your well-being at home and your family life could impinge on your work much more than what it used to. So we had a look at a few validated well-being models, and we consulted with our clinical psychologists to make sure we got their expertise and the best approach to take. And we are using the Office for National Statistics personal well-being questions, which will allow us some meaningful data on how staff are feeling and potentially some benchmarking with the wider population. As is key to the discussion today is that in focusing on the wellbeing of staff, we can't forget about their experience in the workplace in the context of their organisation and their line manager. So we have used, we've extracted 9 questions from our iMatter survey to include within our pulse survey approach this year. So our condensed approach is going to be that pulse survey method, and we'll use our tried and tested questions to get a clear view from staff on how supported they've felt, and what Anna was talking about earlier in terms of what encourages and motivates innovation. The question set we've chosen would indirectly and directly test those elements too. So in addition to all these other areas that we've chose to focus on, we're going to start building our foundation for really understanding how staff are feeling in this critical period of time, and trying to produce some meaningful and actionable data for the organisation to take forward. So we're continuing with that continuous improvement journey that Liz has mentioned. So in terms of the longer term strategy, the pulse survey is just going to be a snapshot in time, but we realise that that's going to form part of our bigger picture, particularly over the next 15 months. So the full iMatter staff experience programme will be reintroduced from January 2021, and along with the pulse survey and the results from that, we will also be interlinking that work and further enhancing our understanding of how staff are in relation to a ministerial short life working group that's been set up, looking at culture. So that group is responsible for improving workplace culture within the NHS, particularly around relationships, behaviours, confidence and trust in NHS senior leadership. As Liz has mentioned, we are developing a Dignity at Work tool, and all that work is also going to feature within our annual staff governance monitoring exercises, which looks to evaluate every year how staff are managed and how they feel they're being managed. So it's critical that the information we get from the pulse survey is used. It's not just something, as Anna had mentioned before, that goes in a drawer, you throw away the key. We hold our boards to account, and the teams hold themselves to account. They really all pitch in and try and work from this. And that's the same concept we're trying to apply as part of our longer term goal, that everything's going to interlink and connect.